carry me away, lift me from this place, ease my burdens, Lord. Take me to your world, let me see your face, carry me away. When I close my eyes, I can see your face, and an ocean of love washes over me, and I am in your presence. Carry me away, lift me from this place, ease my burdens, Lord. Take me to your world, let me see your face, carry me away. When I hear your voice and the power of your word, emotions of peace flood right through my heart. I live for you, and I embrace your holiness. Carry me away, lift me from this place, ease my burdens, Lord. Take me to your world, let me see your face, carry me away. Carry me away, lift me from this place, ease my burdens, Lord. Take me to your world, let me see your face, carry me away. Carry me away, lift me from this place, ease my burdens, Lord. Take me to your world, let me see your face, carry me away. Carry me away, lift me from this place, ease my burdens, Lord. Take me to your world, let me see your face, carry me away.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A. I'm your host today, Peter Dixon, and we are going live to YouTube our Facebook group, SDAQ&A. I've posted the link there, and next week we'll be going to YouTube and Facebook Live as well at the same time. Crossing fingers. My very special guest today I'll be bringing into the room in a moment. Don't forget you can purchase your SDA Q&A mug, and that really helps me continue on with what I'm doing here, providing hopefully interesting and informative content for you guys to watch. You can also, if you like and you're enjoying the content, go to my tip jar over there at PayPal. It's just paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. So let's invite our special guest into the room. Hey, how you going there, Zayne? I'd like everyone to welcome my very special guest, Zayne Henry Alden or Alden?
Alden.
Alden. With all our different accents from around the world, you've just got to check a few things, don't you? Hey, it's great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time to share with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
What's the time there right now?
Right here it is currently nighttime.
Nighttime. I like it. Here it is currently middle of the day, lunchtime.
Oh,
And,
yeah. Here it's 7:40.
it's been
Yeah.
such an interesting learning curve doing all these interviews and learning about video conferencing, and now we're live to YouTube, and soon we'll be going live to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. All the buttons I have to learn to push, as well as button pushing in the conversation.
Yeah.
Hey, look, let's just start the conversation with a little bit of a definition of what intersex means for those that don't know. Can you give us a definition?
So intersex is any biological component that does not fit into the male or female box. So that could mean genitalia or hormones or chromosomes, any kind of that mix. For some intersex people, it is genitalia. For others, it is just hormones, and for others, it's just chromosomes, and then others, it's a mix of all of that. So,
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. And in our conversation today, we're going to explore that a little bit more deeply as we go. But you grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist. Tell us a little bit about that journey, just generally speaking and briefly speaking. And then I want to chat to a little bit about when you kind of first started becoming aware that you were a little bit more different to your peers, perhaps. But just tell us your general, lighthearted Adventist history.
right. So I was pretty much raised with rules, a lot of rules. And I mean, there was things that you could do and couldn't do on Sabbath. There was a lot of, especially on Sabbath, it was very, my grandma, you couldn't, ride your bike around her or anything because, that's something you do 6 days out of the week. So on Sabbath, you shouldn't do that. There's little things like that. Going to church, I couldn't have friends that weren't Adventists. And if I did, it was for educational purposes, right? So it was mostly I kept within the church with everything. I went to church like a good kid, and I studied the lesson, everything. Yeah, pretty much just a typical Adventist upbringing. That
And whereabouts were you raised?
all over. So I was born. I was born in California. And
Okay.
then we were there until I was about 10. And then we moved to Washington State, Vancouver area. And we were there for 4 years. And then we moved to Idaho. And
Right.
now I'm in Texas.
Oh, yes. We chatted about that off air. I love Texas. Some of
Yeah.
my favorite blues musicians come from Austin, Texas, and Dallas. And you'd be too young to know Stevie Ray Vaughan, I guess.
Yeah. No.
You must go and Google Stevie Ray Vaughan. He is such a great guitarist. Passed away in a plane crash, unfortunately, about 1990, I think it was. And there's only two artists that I remember shedding a tear for when they passed, and one was J.J. Cale and Stevie Ray Vaughan. So, yeah, if you enjoy blues music, go and look up Stevie Ray Vaughan. When you were growing up as a child, when did you feel that you were a little bit different to your peers?
When I was about 4, I was always kind of into, I would say, like the boy things, like the cars and the trucks. When I was playing like with the girls and stuff, I was always the man in the situation. Obviously I wasn't being raised as a boy, but it just felt more natural, I guess, to do it that way. So I always knew, like, just deep down in my heart, I knew something was different. It's just I just didn't have words at that time. I was too young, 4, 5, 6, to really know.
Yeah. In my chat with Joe and Dan Laredo, we were chatting a little bit about that awareness of being different, but of course little kids can't articulate it, and but how that feeling of being different, it's hard enough as a normal kid growing up just fitting in, you know. So if there's that added complexity there, was it hard for you as you were kind of, you know, aware of being different, but this added component that you may have noticed other kids weren't having to deal with?
Um, I mean, yeah, I mean, I kind of knew, like other kids are like this and I'm like this, but I didn't make a big deal out of it at the time. I guess I was more just busy being a kid
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying to survive.
Yeah, that's good. So as puberty came along, what sort of differences did you notice?
Puberty was hell. So it started out along the female lines, obviously. But by the time I was about 15, I was noticing, I was feeling, I guess, really different. Like the chemicals in my body weren't female. My body started producing more testosterone, and I was starting to behave more male, and I was starting to do things more male. And it wasn't anything that I could control. I tried to, I tried to say, hey, no, I have to, stick to this because this is how I was raised. This is what the church says. This is what my family says, Um, and at that, when I was 16, I went in for, to the doctor for some stuff, and we were stuff. And she was just like, have you ever heard of intersex? And I was like, nah, like the church says I'm a girl and my family says I'm a girl. So no, that's just not, no. And she was like, okay, well, you're at an age where I don't have to tell your mom. So, I just, whatever. I was like,
She said,
okay, yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but she said you're at the age where you don't have to tell your mum.
Yeah, she wouldn't have to tell my mother because I was right at that borderline age where
Right.
it was saying. And so I told her, yeah, just don't say anything because I'm not comfortable with that yet.
Sure.
But it was becoming quite clear that something was different and not right. And
Yeah.
it's trying to pinpoint for me coming to terms with what could be. Because that I thought I was just transgender, like, oh, okay, maybe I'm just thing, but I didn't have that term yet either.
Yeah.
It was yeah, a lot of terms were hidden from me in my upbringing.
Yeah. But assigned female at birth,
Mhm.
wearing dresses,
Mhm.
given the dolls, feeling somewhat female and feminine and masculine. And look, excuse me if I ask dumb questions.
No,
I'm on an educational learning curve, and so just don't feel you have to answer anything. And anything that is dumb, just say, Peter, silly question. But just as terms as feelings go, were you feeling like if when I speak to say a gay man, the feelings are kind of what I'm guessing, what I'm not speaking on behalf of gay men, but feeling like a man, but as they get older, attracted to women. Attracted to other men instead of other women. Um, you're feeling somewhat feminine and masculine as pre-puberty.
So I was very kind of fluid in
Right.
my attire. So I had long hair like a girl, but I preferred like the overalls and t-shirts and kind of that. Well, you could be a boy or a girl and be dressed like that. I played with girl and boy toys. So I had the trucks, the cars, the remote control stuff, that kind of stuff. But I also had American Girl and things like that.
Yeah.
So it was side by side. My family
Yeah.
didn't force me into a particular gendered thing until I hit puberty.
Right. When you've chatted to your parents about this later, have they spoken that they noticed that going on within you at the time and just didn't know how they could broach it? Or did they just think, no, she's a girl, but she's a bit of a tomboy?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Definitely the tomboy. They didn't really think it was anything biological or gender. They're like, "Oh, she'll outgrow this," um, and it just never resolved. In fact,
Right.
it just got more intense.
Yes, okay. Do you mind me asking at the age, so you went to the doctor, did you say at 16?
Right.
And that's when they said, have you heard of intersex? And that's kind of when you first became aware of the term. Were at around that time, were you noticing attraction to boys or girls or both, or what was the experience there?
So I've always been attracted to boys. Um, um, and yeah, I think I was 8 when I actually kissed my first boy. So I was always very much into the boys. It was just me trying to, resolve everything that
Yeah.
was, yeah. So,
So the doctor says, have have you? Did he say have you heard, or did she say have you heard of the term intersex? She's implying that you might be intersex.
yeah.
Was that implication? Was that dawning on you at that time as well? When she
Well,
said that, did you go? I think she's suggesting something here.
yeah, yeah, because, I knew my body was self-masculinizing at that point.
Yeah.
It was just I didn't wanna come to terms with that.
Yeah,
I
I can understand.
I
That's big.
wanted to just freeze everything and be done, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you like? Do you think? Oh man, there's so many questions. If this had kind of been recognised at birth, and there was an option to have surgery,
Mm.
what is the intersex kind of what how do people approach that with an intersex child? Do they
Um,
do they offer surgery at such a young age when it's more obvious?
yes, but it's not really recommended anymore.
Yeah.
So back when
Right.
I was born, it would have been surgically do something now, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
times have kind of changed where we're fighting for us making the decision.
Yes.
So
Of
baby
course.
being born intersex, it's you leave the child alone until they're old enough to
Yes.
say, this is who I am and this is what I want,
Yes. Yes.
Um, but that's, rare to have a baby born with the ambiguous genitalia at birth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most of us are born one or the other, and it's not found until puberty.
Yes. Okay.
Some intersex people never find out
Yeah.
that until after they're gone. Obviously, their
Yes.
family finds out, but um, yeah, I mean, there's so many different forms of it that
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
it's hard to pinpoint who's intersex and who's not unless they think they're trans, or unless they think that they're,
Yeah.
something, and
Yeah.
then, but, or tests done if there's a history of possible
Yeah.
instances, but now the medical field is so, like, sophisticated, I guess,
Yeah.
that they
Okay.
can actually discover a lot of things, and kind of give heads up, but not when it comes to my form, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
not quite there yet, but getting there.
Getting there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of not giving people surgery if that person's not old enough. Like I even oppose male circumcision. There's a part of me that resents that Adventism had this notion that all Adventist boys must be circumcised for some crazy reason, and now they justify it with health reasons and all this sort of rubbish. But and I'm not blaming my parents for in any way. Mum and Dad, if you're watching, it's just there's a part of me that goes, yeah, even that tiny little bit of surgery or something I wouldn't have liked, that's a tiny little understanding, but for you, there's a massive implications with that. So, are you kind of glad that you were, nothing was kind of tampered with, and you were able to grow to an age where those kind of decisions can be yours?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm really glad that I was born externally looking female, because then it didn't give that option to anyone.
Sure.
It was in their minds. Hey, this kid could possibly be, there's something different here.
Yeah.
Um, and so more power to it, I guess.
Yeah. So the ambiguity was there, but not physically noticeable.
Yeah. Not
So,
as me, and ultrasounds weren't like spot on back then.
oh,
So
no.
anything internal wasn't quite.
Yeah. When you look at the the studies of, is it gametes and DNA and this kind of thing, has the medical world been wanting to kind of do tests on you and things like that to explore the deeper genetic level of things? Have you found yourself a bit of a guinea pig with some of the medical realms?
Not so much with, because it wasn't discovered until later in life.
Yeah.
But there were suggestions like, hey, we want to run this test, or we want to run that test. And I was like, well, we can run a couple. Like, I'm not opposed to that. Well, initially when we did the hormone test, when they were putting me on HRT because we thought I was transgender,
Yeah. Okay.
noticed my testosterone levels were that of a 65-year-old cis male. And all it really needed was, so that was the natural baseline.
Right.
And so they're like, okay, so you definitely have testosterone levels way higher than, a female
Yeah.
would, which could cause problems if we don't, resolve this. So, and since
At
I was
what
trying,
age were you then when they were having this discussion?
oh, this was a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah,
Do you
that
mind me
was,
asking how old you are now?
I'm less than a month shy of 26.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, but my body had already started to fill out male. I was muscularly, you
Yeah.
know, driven, in bulk and stuff. So it wasn't like testosterone did much.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So when they gave you the hormonal replacement therapy,
Yeah.
what hormones were they giving? Because that can go either way. They
Yeah,
can
so
kind
they
of
put me on
increase
testosterone.
estrogen or
Yeah.
decrease it. What was the chemical cocktail for you?
So they put me on testosterone because I was transitioning to male, and that's
Yeah.
what they would use for trans males, testosterone. And then about 4 or 5 months in, so they had a hard time stabilizing my body because my body was all happy and like, oh my gosh, we're getting help here, and so about November, I think it was, of 2019, I had labs done because they wanted to check, blood cell counts and all that, check the hormone level. And I was 561 over what is a healthy limit. So I should have been having cardiac problems. I should have had red blood cell counts that were way out of proportion. I should have had, I should have been in the ER, like having medical situation if I was biologically female. And I wasn't. My body was perfectly fine. The red blood cell counts were fine. My heart was fine. And so that's, and then he was like, well, where's the extra units going? And that's when it was discovered, this is what this is.
Wow.
And
this is only in the last 2 years
that we've actually got the diagnosis.
Yeah. So prior to that, you were thinking, I'm trans.
Right.
Female to male.
Right. And then that, and it kind of
massive
hit the ship. And so I went through another identity crisis.
That's just incredible.
Yeah.
Wow, my mind is boggling. So when that kind of, the dust settled around that kind of identity crisis, if it ever can, and I'm sure there's things you're still thinking about, what kind of discoveries did they find that made it conclusive that you were intersex?
So hormonally, my body doesn't know how to respond to estrogen. It doesn't know what to do with estrogen. It blocks it, essentially. So my body only accepts testosterone. And then they've discovered some male parts in there that are aiding in that just naturally high testosterone level and stuff. So basically, as some people have, or at least one person in particular has told me, I have the best of both worlds, even though I kind of see it as a curse sometimes. So, it's, yeah.
What percentage of people would be officially intersex with an ambiguity of like yourself, the best of both worlds?
Yeah. About 2% of the population. That's up.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
From even 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So it is on the rise, and they don't know why.
Possibly because science is getting better at identifying it as well.
Could be, or it could be environmental and biological reasonings.
Because I understand that there's a decline in males' sperm production as well. So there could be things going on there. So when you had this kind of new diagnosis, were you thinking, I might just get rid of the male bits and see what happens and fully embrace, or is it too late once you reach a certain age for that to have made?
No. I could say, hey, I want to remove these. The way I see it, though, is as long as everything is coexisting, healthy and fine, there's no problems, I'm just gonna leave it be. Like I'm not even going to surgically do anything. If there's there's a legit issue that needs to be resolved, and surgery is the positively only option, then yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I would rather avoid going under than if
Has it made you reconsider the notion of being on the therapy, the HRT? Have you kind of thought, look, I might just let my body be natural and see what happens?
I actually did that. I went off of HRT in March.
Okay.
Of April of this year. Just to see what my body would do. And it's pretty much continuing the pattern that it had before. So right now it's kind of at a pause. So it did kind of do some female stuff, but it's still like the T levels, I can tell when the T levels are still really, really high.
And this is your testosterone levels you're meaning there when you say that?
Yeah, sorry.
No, just in case people didn't realize.
Right, yeah, so testosterone.
Do you mind me asking, like, I don't know if Australia has different level readings there, but I think people between 9 and 27 is considered your kind of a range that's normal. And I think you were mentioning that yours was up to 51 or something. Have you done tests to find out what actual number you could put on the T levels?
Um, so naturally, like I said, it's um that of, an older male. I don't have that number on me right
No.
now. But yeah, it's on the low end. So 800 is what a young male about my age would be on, you
Say that
know.
again. Sorry, the what?
800
Okay.
800
Yeah.
is the hormone level for a cisgender
Okay.
male.
Okay. Yeah, there must be
So
some
that's where they tend to like to keep the trans males as well, about that 800.
yeah.
Um, my body never really went to that 800. It decided to do 900 or 945, or obviously
Okay.
that 13, 51. But yeah, so I'm down naturally more in the 2-300s.
Okay.
So yeah, so that's still, I think for a biological female, it's like 75,
Yeah, okay.
is what, between 50 and 75
Yeah,
somewhere.
okay. Yeah, so,
So,
I'm thinking of a I must have a different ratio
right.
numerically over here, but that gives me a really good idea of where it's at. So when Ted Wilson did his recent tweet, I can fully understand now. Like a lot of people were speaking up on behalf of the I and the A letters in the LGBTQIA plus. Now
Yeah.
that I'm speaking to you and I'm enjoying this conversation, I have an even deeper empathy for how you must have felt when you saw that tweet, because for you, this is demonstrably a natural, born this way process,
Yeah.
physiologically speaking. How did you feel when you read that tweet?
Oh boy. I was very upset. Um, I was very disturbed. I actually I went into a deep depression, and I couldn't believe that someone of such authority could say such a horrific thing about, you know, people who really can't do anything.
Yeah.
And um, I mean, it just showed, that people within the church, they don't care about
Yeah.
what they do. The love of Christ isn't in the church anymore at that point.
Yes.
It's all about what they think is right. And from my perspective, that's a holier than thou situation.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's not Christ-like. And I
No.
don't, I can't, I forgive Ted Wilson for, things that he said, but that doesn't take away the pain that he's inflicted
No.
on thousands of us.
It's
Um,
yeah, it's ignorant. It's just
and-
plain ignorant, and I don't think there's been any kind of apology or acknowledgement of that ignorance. And a president of a global 25 million membership sized church needs to have advisors that can help him pre-tweet. Um, so I hope that leadership somewhere addresses that, and he does another tweet.
yeah, I'm not
I,
death on that though.
no,
He,
there's a
yeah,
real process
mm,
to make the world comply. To resistance is futile. I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan or not, but it's becoming one of the things I really respected about Ellen White and her ability to kind of deal with administrators is that she set up the unions so that the different parts of the global church could have this kind of a nuanced approach to helping address issues within their smaller community, whether locally. she was so opposed to this global kingship kind of approach. And you can see demonstrably that left unattended, we now have comments coming out this from the president, and a compliance document that lists, women are suppressed, the gay marriage is out. There's, you must believe in 6 to 10,000 years creation, these kind of issues, and you start to think, what's going to happen if someone adds to these compliance documents, And a lot
Yeah.
of people say, oh, my church is fine. They accept me as I am. It's wonderful. And they get back to singing about Jesus and everything's great. But you watch in 2 years' time, if that continues to garner more teeth and sanctions and reprimands become more common, there's going to be a trickle-down effect to the local church. So I have a real burden for this idea of inclusivity and allowing people to be involved in the church, even though I'm not in the church anymore because of this. But it seems to me that an effective institution that truly honoured the teachings of Christ would allow people to have positions at all levels in the church. But at the moment, women can't have the top job. And I think for the LGBTQIA plus community, it's even worse. Like,
Oh,
I don't think you're even allowed to be a member, are you?
I mean, I guess if I got married to a guy, then I couldn't be a member. No, that's essentially what, he said as well in another thing
That's
is that
that Russian interview, yeah.
I couldn't be a member of the church anymore. I'd be
What
thrown
about,
out.
what about positions in the church? Have you noticed any stumbling blocks towards the LGBT community gaining any kind of position in the church? Like, are you allowed to be an elder or?
Not if you're active, from what I've seen.
But even not active, are there people from that community that hold actual public office in the church? I'm not talking about, the person that's allowed to welcome people at the door or maybe can be a
Right.
Dorcas leader or something. I'm meaning,
I
oh,
was
I
part
don't
of
know.
really small churches, and so if you are LGBT, you're closeted, or you just don't even pursue because
Okay.
you know what the church teaches, and you're pretty much a goner. So I know women elders, and I know men who are elders and all that, and you know all of the Adventist churches that I've been in, you can be gay and or whatever and be an elder. You just can't be acting on that and talk about it and stuff like that. Like, you can't be out basically and
Mm.
promoting that and have a position.
And here you are, it's natural, as we said earlier, demonstrably,
Yeah.
you're attracted to guys legally in the secular world, you're allowed to get married.
Mhm.
It's very natural. It's a natural process.
Right.
How do you feel about that? Does that make you think, oh, I'd better not get married, or are you going to let the church dictate that for you, or are you just going to whatever?
Well, I'm pretty much at the point where the church can pretty much say and do whatever they want. But I'm going to do what I feel is what God wants me to do. And if God
Amen.
wants me to be married to a guy, then he's going to put the right guy in my life, and we will be happily married, and we will raise a family together, and we will do what straight people do.
Yeah,
Um, and I hate it when people say, "Oh, the LGBT lifestyle or whatever," because there is no
it's ridiculous.
lifestyle. Or I mean, I walk my dog. I eat. I get up. I go to work. I mean, I'm human. I
I
mean,
know. I
we
know.
do the same thing as heterosexuals. So I'm not seeing where this should be a problem.
Mm,
I mean, ever since I was a young kid, reading the Bible, I've never read it to be discriminatory.
mm.
Um, and I've never, thought of Jesus as, oh, you're gay, therefore. you know, I'm not going to let you into this kingdom message
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, it's sad, isn't it? Because I was in the interview I just did with Gillian Ford and John Rosier, episode 20, if anyone wants to go and have a look. We were talking about what Adventism could have been to the world,
Mm.
um, where you could really focus on understanding the covenant and the Sabbath in a non-legalistic way, and in
Yeah.
ways that in many ways the Christian body at large don't really grasp as well. Um, and yet it's becoming such a divisive um, element in many ways, and I and I feel so much for all the rainbow letters there community, but especially for the I and the A with regarding to that tweet.
Mhm.
Do you mentioned there raise a family? Is it too personal to ask? Are you able to have a baby?
Um, if I did want it to be a miracle because my T levels, testosterone levels, are way too high. So that'd have to be a miracle performed there. But as far as carrying, I could carry.
Yeah,
Um, I have that part. I
you
just
could do
couldn't.
IVF.
Yeah, I just couldn't naturally deliver.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
there'd be just a lot of medical intervention that would have to be done for stuff, and they'd have to block the testosterone and try to get my body to respond to estrogen, which probably wouldn't happen. So basically, just be a miracle if
yeah.
no.
But would you think about IVF as at least carrying a embryo to term and then having a Caesar or something, a cesarean?
Um, I would fear for the embryo.
Okay,
Um, I would fear my body killing it, uh,
right. Yeah,
because biologically I'm male.
yeah, yeah,
So my body wouldn't know what to do with it.
yeah. And it may also um,
Yeah,
like babies get receive the hormones from the host,
right.
um, and so there may be an overproduction of various hormones as well that might.
That and if it did go to term, I the risk of my child also being intersex is like exponentially higher.
Right. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I've heard stories of mothers giving birth to a child, that child's born intersex, then they get pregnant again, have another baby, that child's also intersex, and with the exact same form of
Right.
intersex.
Okay.
And then the medical field going, okay, well, this just does not happen.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe you should just quit having kids,
Yeah.
and the mom's like, no. And then she has another kid, and that kid's not intersex.
Right.
And
Okay.
and then she has another one, and it's intersex. And then they test her saying, okay, hold on. And they find out she actually is intersex. See, weird things like this is how people find out that they're
Mm.
just
It's,
not.
and sadly at the expense of life and dabbling with life as well, just to find out where they're at. Yeah.
And I know that family was in England, and the doctors were telling them to abort these babies
Mm.
because they were going to be born intersex, and they just did not want to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Boy,
So,
there's a lot of complex issues that people have to face. You've mentioned about feeling like a boy or a girl. How do you know you are a boy or you are a girl? Tell me that.
so I don't identify as a boy or a girl. I just live as me, and I do whatever. So some days I dress like a girl, and some days I dress like a boy. In fact, at work, I get gendered both male and female, um, because you can't tell with me anymore if
Yeah.
I'm a boy or a girl. So I pretty much, obviously it's not my preferred, but people do gender male or female, or and use those, but I prefer to keep everything neutral.
Yeah.
Uh, so
You, I want you to help me with understanding pronouns a little better. And you mentioned to me that your preferred pronouns are they and them, and um, and I, like a lot of people that are heterosexual, um, you might know someone that's always identified as he or she, and I've done this myself, where you'll accidentally call someone he instead of she because you've known them as one or the other. But not only do I have trouble with, I remember even at school having trouble with pronouns. I think I've got some mild dyslexia there.
yeah.
So just unpack pronouns for those of us that may not understand them fully, and
So
give us some examples of how we would use they and them in conversation with you.
right. So let's think. Um, if you were to use a gendered pronoun, you know, could say, well, he is going to the store, right? Um, but when you're using neutral pronouns, you use it like it's like you would for a group. So like they are going to the store.
Right.
So there's not really any, it's just put to one person instead of a group of people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I've been watching that series called Billionaire. Have you seen that? And
No.
there's a intersex or trans person. They don't identify exactly, but their pronouns are they and them. And it's
Mhm.
interesting listening just to conversation in because they're very good at in the TV series at getting it right, you know.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. You'll sometimes think, what do they mean? They? Oh, they're meaning that person right in front of them. So it takes a while to get used to the idea that you're not speaking in plural, you're speaking they. And so if
Mhm.
you notice people have trouble with having conversation with you directly, and then shifting to when they do actually mean they. Or if you notice people kind of not having as much problem as I seem to be having.
Well, I think a lot of people overthink think this. Because like I mean even my family, like my dad, I mean he tries so hard sometimes, but he still is, you know, programmed to she, her, and he, him. So he runs through all the she, he, they, you know,
And
to
always
try to get
self-correcting.
that.
It
Yeah.
forces you to overthink it, though.
Yeah. So, but I'll say like, Dad, I'm not a girl. And I'm like, they, you know, he's like kind of, yeah. So I'm still having to, you know, correct some of my family, but I think as a whole, like they mean well.
Yeah,
Uh, so I think as a whole, it's, they're just trying to wrap their minds around everything still. I
yeah,
mean, I don't even think they've come to terms with me being intersex. I know my dad still wants me to open my file and show him all the tests and everything, and I'm not, you know, with
he sees you as his little girl still.
right, you know, and you know, he says I want to see the facts, but does he? You know, and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's like I have to think about, you know, is he really open to this?
yeah,
Or is he just saying it to sound supportive? But so I mean maybe later on down the road I will, but
yeah,
for now I'm just letting my family kind of transition
yeah,
with stuff. And so I mean they use terms like gender fluid and agender and things like that because that's what makes sense to them. Like
mm,
my dad, he'll say, oh yeah, you know, Zayne's gender fluid, um, because that's what makes sense to him.
yeah. Okay.
And I'm pretty, you know, tolerant of things like that
Yeah,
with certain people. I used to not be. A couple of years ago, I was quite the opposite.
yeah. Interesting. I
But
mean,
yeah,
what's happening right now, I think, within the Adventist community that I'm observing, is a light's gone on for a lot of people, not just me, where we can actually be allies and publicly speak up that we're in support of it, and also be included in your world also. Like the other day, I signed up to kinship, and Floyd helped me through that, and it's great because I think I've mentioned several times I've been a musician since the early '80s. I lived professionally from 1993 in the music world, secular and Adventist and Christian and New Age and all kinds of music. And so, being in the world of music, the gay community is very accepted. It's very normal. But poking my head back into the Adventist realm, I think Adventists are still transitioning in working out how they can be supportive and how they can be allies. So having these conversations are great because I think it helps to normalize it, because this show is watched by all Adventists. It's not speaking into an echo chamber. But I love that now I'm a member of kinship, and I can enjoy their meetings and just be a part of the community without thinking, oh, I'm an ally over here, guys. You carry on. I'll just watch from the corner and give you a thumbs up. I enjoy embracing that community and how it's got its own diverse way of worshipping and connecting and communicating. And already I've received about 10 emails from people welcoming me and how you going and having conversations, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. And I know with Uncle Floyd as president, things
Yeah,
just
I
kind of,
know.
yeah.
And I think where I was going with that is that it's good that people who may have been a little bit more unhappy with how slow people are kind of getting the idea, that there's a little bit more of a embracing, okay, look, we'll be a bit more accepting and tolerant as the transition happens.
Yeah, honestly, sometimes I wish the Adventist Church would just um do Q&As like this, like
Yeah.
literally in individual churches, and actually like talk with us and not just
Yeah.
throw books at us.
It's
Like actually sit
ridiculous. They
down,
don't. They don't. What about that girl Kendra that on an Adventist official Adventist podcast, I think she came out as bi. I might be wrong. Sorry, Kendra, if you're watching, I'd love to interview you and get it right. But I'm pretty sure as soon as the church officially realised that there was a little bit too much gay going on, she lost her position. I think I'm right with that. I know that Lauren Seibald's done a great interview with her. I might try and find the link and share that in the description.
yeah,
But
that kind of stuff, it really is what makes me angry
yeah,
almost.
yeah, me
Um,
too. Me too.
because she didn't change who she was. That's
Ah,
how she think, but it's just, the church and stuff just can't.
I love when people say to me, "Oh, look, you can't, you can only help the church if you're within the church." I'm thinking, really? What's this?
Uh,
What's going on here? um, and not necessarily help, but I can have a conversation if I want within the church. No one can stop me. And I think it's so sad that there's a lot of supporters and allies for the LGBT QIA plus community, but there's no official platform to have discussions. And whenever there seems to be a discussion heading into the open, it's squashed. And
right.
some of the most smulchy, boring productions are Adventist productions, because you just know that behind the scenes they are aware that there's only certain things they can say or do, and so it's become so nice, and it's like watching the Brady Bunch, just people are yearning for real conversations, I think, and I'd love to see a kind of an official church podcast that was really getting into it.
Yeah.
Um, we've kind of covered this a little bit already. There's two questions that we chatted a little bit about earlier about choosing to like guys, or you're always into them. You've kind of touched on that a little bit, but maybe just expand on that. And also we've touched on this too, but why you don't live as a girl. I think you've already answered that. But I thought before we kind of move on to other topics, do you want to add anything to those two things?
Um, so I mean, gender and sexuality, those aren't choices. So the only choice I made was to live or die. And I chose to live. Um, and so I can't live as a girl because, well, one, that's like a chore. It doesn't feel natural. Um, and two, I'm not a girl. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
chromosomally or hormonally, and so for me that would feel like betrayal um, of how God made me, and it would be living a lie, and I can't live a lie
Yeah,
and have a relationship with God.
yeah, yeah. Do you see a time where the endless drips of false hope that the Adventist Church throw out there to women and LGBT and to musicians will ever change, or is this false hope eternal? Like, what keeps you in the church? You think it's going to change one day, or you're just
I
happy at your grassroots level and kinship?
I'm fine with just kinship right now. I mean, I don't go to an Adventist church, like, walk through their doors that often, and it's been like that since 2016. Um, I'm not against going to the Adventist church. It's just when I see things like, Wilson posting on his thing, that makes me scared of the church. And no one should have to feel like they have to hide who they are or be afraid to say things. Fear is a killer. And I don't think that, Ted Wilson and people within the church realize that, you can't change things that are innate and natural
Yeah.
and God
Yeah.
given.
With people have written to me this week, and said that with intersex, they can see that that's demonstrably innate nature. You can literally do a scientific test to prove that. And that's why I love hearing you say that you're part of your authenticity is that you can't claim to be female because you're not. You are intersex, and it's a beautiful thing to embrace, really. Once you can get over the struggles of living in a world that doesn't accept it. But if you could, like, once you realize how natural it is, you're born, for a reason, and here you are, embrace it.
Yeah.
Once you can kind of go through the landmines, the minefields,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Coming to terms with it is, I think,
yeah,
the hardest.
hardest thing.
Accepting the fact that
Yeah.
it's how I'm going to be the rest of my life. That's
Okay.
always the hardest.
Yeah, because I'm not trying to trivialize it, but I'm just saying that there's a real obvious natural part of
Mhm.
the component to it. Whereas this person was saying, okay, I can see that, but regarding gay people, it's a choice. It's nothing to do with nature. Whereas I'm saying even gay is a natural thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
It's just
So,
less obvious in a scientific way to kind of,
yeah. So, kind of how I see it is when a baby is in that embryo fetal time frame, there's a lot of chemicals that the mother's body is putting in and stuff, to kind of develop this. And in that is the brain's development component, where the human brain is thing. And I firmly believe that being gay or being transgender or any of that is genetically
mm,
inherited. It's
yeah,
not, yeah, it may skip a few generations or something, but it's there.
yes,
It's just not, or someone could be like, "Oh yeah, I'm gay," right? But they don't live it because of their family or society or whatever. And it's still there. And then their kid or their nephew or their grandson or their whatever
yeah,
is living as, true to themselves. And all of a sudden it's, well, that's a choice.
yeah,
Really?
I know. Yeah, I agree. Look, and that's a good way of putting it, and I agree with you 100%. And there's enough, there's so much information there that may not be, you know, I can see this gene or anything, but there's plenty of information there to confirm what you've just said, and even just from the issue of hormones that are and how they are passed on genetically. Studies definitely show about the genetic component of passing these things on. So, where are you right now with Adventism? You've said that you mainly kind of focus on kinship programs that they do online and whatnot. You haven't really gone into the church, but how are you feeling with being accepted by family and friends now that are Adventists?
Well, I mean, a lot of the Adventists that have known me for the past 11 years, they're accepting. Um, they they'll talk about it, but I think it's still in that they're not sure how to talk about it because of the church at large.
Right.
But I would say, even with the Adventist church that I attended in Idaho, in high school and everything, when I kind of left, a lot of those people that I went to church with, they did change my name. They did change my pronouns. They did try to understand. And
Okay.
yeah, they may not fully understand still, but they have been putting in an effort to understand. And that tells me more.
Yeah,
And you know,
that's
I
great. And I think that's where I was kind of going before as well with this notion of false hope. Like when you identify positive shifts and changes in people like you are there at a local level, that can give people hope. I guess what I would be concerned about is that we see these positive trends and these positive, um, you know, adjustments and whatnot and actions. But if the church is offering false hope, well, it seems like Ted Wilson's not offering false hope. He's being very clear about where the church stands on this. But there's so many people that will say, oh, it's going to change, it's going to change, it's going to change. I kind of think like the church often doesn't change unless there's legal action. That's when equal pay kind of came about because of threatened legal action. Surely there's going to come a time, like you could not work in a bank these days and discriminate based on gender or you know, sexual preference. You just couldn't do it. You'd be taken to court immediately. What are your thoughts on that general swathe of comment?
Well, I don't think that it would take legal action. I think because there are conferences that are more affirming than others.
Mm,
I think honestly, would have to, it would come down to people within taking a stand and saying no.
yeah,
Yes, this could cause division, but I think that in the end, that may be for the better. I mean, yeah, it's not ideal, but there has to come a time when everything says is just stopped. You
yeah,
can't fight forever. You can't think
enough kind of
forever.
thing.
Yeah, but the other issue is they just have the wrong people in power.
Yeah,
People like Wilson should not be in the position that he's in.
yeah,
And so I think the church on kind of a divisional level is being illogical and unintelligent
yeah,
and just they're basically trying to put God into something that God's not a part of,
yeah.
and or
There's
does
an
he want to
irony.
be part of? So the Adventist church right now is playing God, and
Yeah,
God doesn't need help doing his job. God can do his job very much on his own, and instead the church wants to play God and say, these people can't have this. And the LGBTQIA community is going to wherever they want to say.
mm,
And they claim that's what God says. But I can't see a God that I mean, the God I worship surely does not
Mm.
hurt other people, doesn't deny them basic human right, doesn't deny, I mean, a religion that does that isn't even a religion
Mm.
at that point. It's yeah.
Yeah, no,
That
well said. And I think if what's interesting, so my generation is actually not baby boomer, but we're not Gen X. We're called baby busters, and it's a very small generation. People born, I think, from 61 to about 68, something like that. And we're like George Clooney, Tom Cruise, that kind of. I'm not trying to claim any connection with them,
yeah.
but that kind of generation that does things and involved, but we weren't young enough to really understand the whole hippie thing, even though I've got long, messy hair. And I don't know what Gen X is doing about all this, but the millennials and younger, wow, what an interesting bunch of amalgamation of generations there. They're not taking this lying down. So I kind of see hope in what you're saying there, where people are just going, you know what, we're sick of this. We're just not going to take it anymore. We're done. But instead of leaving, I think they're going to kind of become more politically involved and put their foot down. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that the moment that the Adventist church, the older generations basically start dying off and my generation starts taking over, there's going to be some serious change happening. Um,
I think
so
I think the only thing I'd interrupt and say there, and I said this to Dan and Joe as well. I thought that when I was your age, that when my generation get into positions of power, we're going to bring about change. Didn't happen. The boomers before me thought that. The Gen X thought that, and I still don't even know what they're doing right now.
I don't think they know what they're doing right now.
They did a lot in the early '90s and got grunge happening. Yeah, good. Thanks for that, Seattle. But the my point is, I've seen this loop recurring for 40 years in my adult life. I've got friends that are boomers that have seen it going for 60 years. There's a little bit of a kind of naive notion that when we get into power, it's going to change. Because coming up behind you, there's a huge number of conservative Adventist young people that are going to carry the mantle for the Ted Wilson kind of politics. So I'm not trying to be discouraging there at all. What I'm actually doing is a call for action, because if people want change, they can't just think it's going to be if something happens. It's got to be like today. Get write emails to Ted, bombard his tweets. The people that I'm excited to kind of be observing are these young millennials and down who are just going, no, we're sick of this, and they're speaking up publicly on social media about it.
Right.
So
Well,
I'm not
that's
being
kind of
negative.
where
I'm just
I'm at.
saying do it.
Yeah. I'm kind of at the point where I'm speaking up saying, hey, this is not right.
Good on
Um,
you.
you know, doing things like this is, getting my voice out there a little bit more.
Yeah.
Um, but it does there needs to be some serious change. But I mean, if you look at the millennial, so my generation as a whole, there's a significant percentage of us that are a part of the LGBT.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we're closeted, that percentage is still pretty high.
Yeah.
And so I think that the moment that people like me are, start speaking up or start doing stuff, the more and the safer that we try to make, the communities and the church and everything, the more that these closeted Adventists and stuff, they can come out and say,
Yeah.
this is this, and they don't have to live.
Yeah. Because the downside of that first wave of people coming out, like I feel like this, are the ones that kind of get shot down, as in coming out in support, or in the case of actual gay people coming out, that first wave kind of creates a bit of a safe space for the next lot coming through. But either way, your generation, my generation, has to speak up now, and yeah, we'll take some hits for it. and there'll be all sorts of carnage in some ways.
Yeah.
People are going to lose their jobs. People are going to, be, have all sorts of smear campaigns held against them. But I think, unless there is going to be some kind of change, there's got to be a first wave that's willing to make a dash and speak up and willing to take some of those hits.
Right.
I know some really powerful, wonderful people in top-level leadership who've said to me they can't speak up because they're a pastor. They might lose their job. I've had people in division level say to me that I can't because I would lose my job. There's going to be a day where they have to just take that risk, I think. No pressure. What do
Yeah.
you think? Am I being too militant in my call to action?
No. I definitely think that no, you're pretty well spot on. It does need to happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So
When I was talking to Floyd the other day, he mentioned Todd Leonard, who is the pastor of a very sort of gay accepting church community at Glendale City. They're called Glendale City Church, and they're in California. And I thought I'd just mention that because I am going to try and get Todd on the program. But for anyone who's wanting to kind of feel a part of an actual Adventist church, I think Floyd was saying that Glendale City will accept membership and whatnot from around the world if people are being kicked out of other places. So that's exciting to hear of some action taking place there. So I thought I'd just mention that. Have you been to that church at all, the Glendale City Church? No.
I haven't, but I mean, I'm not too worried, honestly, about my membership within the church. And the Adventist church that my membership still resides in, up in Idaho, they actually changed my name on my membership. So there's no record on my letter anymore of my former, from what I understand. So the name I have now is on that thing. So no matter where I were to put
That's
it,
great. Yeah.
I'm pretty much safe.
And I think people watching that may be less safe, if they go and look up the website for Glendale City Church, Adventist Church, they might be able to reach out there. Definitely go and join SDA Kinship. I think that's a wonderful place to experience that sense of church, even though it's not a church. It's kind of a movement more than anything.
Mhm.
So I encourage people that are viewing to join up there and maybe check out the Glendale City Church as well.
I mean, anyone who is LGBTQIA, affirmation is critical
Yeah,
in the suicide reduction
yeah,
percentage. And any church that is affirming should be very public about being affirming,
yeah,
because some of us would probably move our membership there if we knew.
yeah, yeah,
And I just don't think that enough churches are public in
yeah,
it. I mean, Southern California and California as a whole, that's pretty liberal.
yeah,
So they are going to be more public,
yeah,
but if you're in a more conservative conference or in a more conservative area, it's harder.
yeah,
So then you have to use those of us who are, thing, as like a word of mouth. Hey, my church is pretty accepting, or
yeah,
this is, I can't say that the church in Idaho is accepting or affirming in any way, considering that they're changing pastor and everything.
It could shift
But
any minute.
it
Yeah,
could shift, yes. But it's the people, I guess, that aren't so much in leadership, or they are in a leadership position,
yeah,
but they have history with me. If someone doesn't have history with someone, they tend to be more judgmental. They tend to
yeah,
be more of a Bible thumper,
yeah,
smack you over the head with
yeah,
scripture,
yeah. Yeah, I
than
know.
actually knows you and physically has had conversations.
When I interviewed Dan and Joe. Joe mentioned a time that he was in his car and at a very dark moment, and he just felt like it was literally raining on the car, and he was by himself, and he felt that he had no one to turn to. And what I'm hoping in having these conversations is we're at least informing people that need help and need to feel connected. They can contact me or you. More importantly, they can go to places like Glendale City Church, move their membership there, or go to SDA Kinship and just sign up, where there's loving people that will talk and help, and they're trained as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can be spreading the word that there is help out there, and there's a connection, and there's other people that feel the same things.
Yeah, and I mean, if there are any intersex or non-binary or gender creative, diverse, however someone wants to put it, who are Adventists, um, who want someone to talk to, I would say reaching out to me would definitely be a good thing. And also
Right.
join
Yeah.
SDA Kinship for sure. And then tell Floyd um, that, that's what you need.
Yeah.
And we will make sure that people like me find out.
That's awesome. That is awesome. And if you're comfortable, maybe send me your email address later, or give me permission to use it, and I'll put it in the description below so people can contact you direct if you're happy with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll also put links to the Glendale City Church and to Kinship as well. Hey, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I've really enjoyed talking with you today, and I hope we can get you back and talk more. And what I'm hoping for and looking forward to is just having conversations with people. We can have a conversation down the track that has nothing to do with intersex, and just some whatever, just converse.
Yeah.
And we're all people, and we're all on this planet, and we're all mammals making our way the best we can. So I've really appreciated your time today. Was there anything you wanted to share? I wanted to say that probably, even though your father seemed to be having some difficulty, it sounds like they've been very loving and supportive of you throughout, which is
Yeah,
nice
my
to hear.
sister does pretty good with my pronouns. Um, well, all of my siblings, really. Oh, except for maybe two. Um,
How many siblings have you got?
so I was raised with one sister, adopted. Both of us were adopted. And then I have biological siblings that I'm also in contact with. But I really only talk to the girls because the boys are very transphobic, homophobic,
Oh, really?
yeah, oh yeah. There is definitely that split. So I
Yeah,
feel safer around all my sisters than I
yeah,
do
yeah,
with
yeah,
brothers. So
yeah, yeah. Hey, well, we wish you all the best, and thank you for being available for people to contact you. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm just looking, which buttons do I press now that I've got a new kind of landscape in front of me. But I think, everyone that's watching later will send up love hearts or whatnot. And I look forward very much to chatting with you again down the track.
yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
yeah,
Thank my guests, Zayne, Henry, Alden.
Alden, yeah.
Alden.
Mhm.
Yeah, I knew I'd get something wrong. Thank you, Zayne. It's great to chat to you. Look forward to next time.
Yeah.
See, those awkward moments of saying farewell and still here.